Top Game with your host, Sammy Castro. Episode 12, Master Gunnery Sergeant Scott Daubert, a.k.a. the Noble Savage. Admin note, at the request of the guest, please support the USO, a congressionally chartered organization. The USO operates centers worldwide on DoD installations to include combat zones. Their focus has been on providing service members a home away from home, in addition to keeping them connected with their loved ones. Get more information at uso.org. Disclaimer, the views and opinions expressed on Top Game are those of the producers or the guests appearing on the program and do not reflect the views and opinions of the United States Marine Corps or the Department of Defense. Thanks for tuning in. Control. You know, one of the things that you have is downtime. And the other thing was an opportunity to crack a book or, and as a media kind of, for the first time, I started to see some of the benefits of it, and picking that up, you know, kind of exploring little niche areas, because somebody can make a podcast about anything. It could be about craft beer. It could be about Marine Corps history, and whatnot. And some of the podcasts I've subscribed to over time have been everything from podcasts about video games to podcasts about current events, podcasts about intelligence. Stratfor, which is a open source intelligence firm out of Austin, Texas, they put out one that kind of covers their geopolitical analysis, and that one is actually very beneficial. They're not. I don't think they do as many as they used to initially, but now they've kind of gone to like a subscription model. So I don't get those get to those as often as I used to. But some of the more popular ones that I've subscribed to somewhat fairly recently, Tim Ferriss is one. He's an author as well as a podcaster, mm-hmm. And then the Joe Rogan Experience is another one. But that's kind of like junk food for me. And then one of the guests that I heard on the Tim Ferriss podcast, and later he was interviewed on the Joe Rogan podcast, was Jocko Willink, and he's a retired Navy SEAL, a Mustang officer, and spent a lot of time working with the Army and the Marines, and his is kind of like a chicken soup for the military, for the military man, and business leaders too. And him and his war buddies, they got a company called Echelon Front, and they do business consulting, basically teaching leadership to managers, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of that goes on in the business world. You have managers, but not leaders. Yeah. And what he's done is they've developed a business model where they go in and they kind of troubleshoot what's going wrong here? What's the command climate like? What can we do to fix it and whatnot? And you'd be surprised how big of a demand signal that there is for just that very type of consultation. He's written some books, but the podcast is very well done. It's cleanly produced. He's got a co-host. I don't. So all of this is just me kind of figuring it out as I go along. Yeah. And I made some small upgrades here and there, but for the most part, this is all self-taught. My wife's a teacher, so mm-hmm. I use her educator discount for all the Adobe products. Okay. And one of the software suites that they have is called Audition. Before I was using that mic you see over there, it's called a Yeti Blue. Yeah. But just a single mic, and I would set it up in bi-directional. But coming here to San Angelo, I figured it was time for an upgrade, and stopped off at Tarpley Music downtown area and picked up these mics here. Nice. And makes it a little bit easier on the aspect of production, because before I would extract out like the noise floor, and then kind of go through and make sure that all the edits and whatnot were clean. But it's been a learning experience. But one of the things that came out of it that I couldn't have anticipated was the reception. So there's like multiple demographics that I found. You have the old timers who are like, why are we doing this? But then after listening to maybe 30, 45 minutes of it, I think they get it. Then you have my peer group, right? At that Master Sergeant junior master gunnery sergeant, right? If that's even a thing, and then some of the staff and other staff and COs. For them, for that group, it seems to be like because we're not necessarily millennials.
But you grew up with a little bit more of this stuff than so, old guys like me.
Exactly, and they're all in with it and very very supportive. I've got a murderer's row of patrons that include guys like Sam Carter and John Scoggins, and Sean Nicow, Kevin Simmons, Chris Sonneman was my first guest, and they really have encouraged me to continue with this and have spurred me on. But then you got the youngsters, and the feedback that I've gotten from them Master Guns is I can't even begin to describe the amount of just goodwill and motivation and just positive feedback that they've sent my way. And one of the key takeaways have been that they get to see the human side of us, right? You walk into a room. If there's no NCOs in the room, it's just all Lance Corporals and Master Guns walks in the room, everything changes, right? Yeah. So it's like you can't observe them in their natural environment any longer. Kind of like a wildlife documentary, and so like a pack of hyenas, and then here comes this big lion, and everybody's got to like scurry and get out of the way. But it reveals that human component of who we are. And the other thing was, it's allowed me an opportunity to sit down with key leaders in our OC field and throughout the rest of the Marine Corps too, because it's not just been SIGINTers that I've had on to kind of pick their brain and identify some best practices and lessons learned, experiences. So it's kind of like our own version of a center for lessons learned. And then I'm not the only one that benefits from it. From my small amount of time with DIA, placement and access is a thing, right? So being here at this working group, there's some heavyweights around us, and I'd be naive to think that wasn't the case. And whenever I get the opportunity to sit down with someone such as yourself, battalion ops chief for one of our 3 radio battalions, I'd be a fool not to take advantage of that. And it'd be selfish not to let others, right? So I want to say thanks for agreeing to be here and do this.
Well, thank you for asking me. So and I'm glad to hear that that you're getting positive feedback from the younger Marines, because it was kind of to realize that they're actually getting something out of it. I think that's really good, because that's how do you connect with the younger crowd, and if this is the way we connect, then so be it.
Yeah, so some of the guys that told me I was getting a tattoo, and I was just listening to you talk to Master Sergeant so and so, or and they consume information differently than we did, and they like to touch it and twist it and expand it and pinch it and zoom in and zoom out and all of that, and we didn't have access to those tools, and so. For this to be considered the information age, I think is an appropriate concept. But part of the problem with that sometimes, though, is that they lose that interpersonal connection. And I remember spending hours and hours and hours on a flight line waiting for a bird out or a bird in, depending on how you're looking at it, and playing spades, waiting for our stick to be, called up and ready to get on. And it's in those conversations and getting to know one another on those deployments that you get what it is that I thought was a vital component to this organization and why I wanted to join. And that was to be part of something larger than myself. But it was also the camaraderie, right? And we see a lot of that, but I don't know if all of the Marines see that in the same way that we did coming up, because if they're at the barbershop, waiting in line for a haircut, they're all got their faces in their phones, right? And they're texting away, and not that they're disconnected, they're connected, but to someone else or somewhere else, on whatever social network they happen to be on, or whatever website, blog, you name it, watching YouTube videos, or maybe even listening to a podcast, right? Whereas, I remember some of those conversations, waiting an hour and a half, as a sergeant at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina.
Waiting for the first sergeant's formation. We're done with our work.
Right. And then you're just kind of hoping that another staff sergeant doesn't walk in to take that staff and CO only seat, right? But you're just sitting there, talking it out, and you can take that time to write out any tasks that you still got hanging over your head, but also to connect with the Marines to the left and right of you. And so that's another, I guess, motivation for this project was to encourage that type of interaction. Some of the messages that I've gotten from junior Marines have revolved around their conversations with their peer group about some of the different perspectives that they've been exposed to that they weren't exposed to previously. And interestingly, some guys who have known each other for years learn new things about some of my guests who, they didn't have that information before. So the format kind of gets a little bit deeper sometimes than with some than others, but I think there's been enough demand signal and I guess positive feedback to push me to continue moving forward with this. But you're headed to a new duty station soon, and it's a new billet for us, Deputy Commandant for Information. What does that even mean?
I don't actually know. Looking at it, the way I look at it is, last year the Commandant said, "Hey, we're going a whole new direction with information, and we need to bring everything under one umbrella at the DCI." And he created that. He put General Donahue there. Very very good general. He was the MARDIV CG while I was at part of the time that I was at First Radio, and I think he was definitely the right guy for the job. From my take, it's been 02 heavy and 06 heavy. There's not really a whole lot of 2600 representation there. So I'm going to take it, at me being the first guy in the billet, I'm going to take it as my charter is to ensure that they're informed on what 2600s already do. Okay. A lot of what I've heard in the OAGs and things like that is a lot of good ideas, and hey, we need to look in this direction, we need to look in this direction, but a lot of it is stuff that has always been in the 2600 charter. It's things we've always done, we just haven't done them in the last 15 years. So that's going to be a new billet, which is great for me. I'm a builder, I'm a fixer. I don't like to follow in on something that's already rolling smooth, because then I get bored. Right. So I'm a builder. So I'm gonna assess the situation, see what I can do for the Ock Field, and make sure we get our equities.
She's moving from one side of the coast, one coast to the other, right? You looking forward to being in the Beltway?
Not necessarily the Beltway, but I'm ready for the East Coast. One thing we've enjoyed our time in California, but we've learned that we're not Southern California people. It's not really our niche. It's for lack of a better term, it's a little too laid back for us. I've never been stationed in Hawaii, but I could imagine that we would not do well in Hawaii, right? Because California's too laid back for us. So we'll like that. I'm not really looking forward to the big city, but I am looking forward to what DC has to offer, especially to the family. Okay.
All right. So you're originally from?
I'm originally from, closest town was called Lebanon, Missouri, so it's down in the Ozarks. So we were talking about this here in San Angelo. We were talking about how, the small town, and it just makes me laugh because when I was here 10 years ago, it had 100 and some thousand people.
Right.
My county has 30,000 people.
The county has 30,000.
The county. There was one county high school, and our graduating class in the entire county was 300 people. So yeah, I'm from the Ozarks, and I grew up a hillbilly. So
okay, hunting and
hunting, fishing, all that stuff. So
when did you join the Marine Corps?
I actually joined the Marine Corps while I was still in high school. I signed the paperwork in February, so like literally right after Reagan transferred over to Bush. So right after Reagan left office, I went to boot camp in December of that year. So.
Okay. And how did you get into the ZOC field?
It was actually my older brother. He actually passed away a couple years ago. So
my condolences.
Thank you. He is actually the reason I came in the Marine Corps. Well, he's the reason I chose this job field in the Marine Corps, and he's also the reason I came back in the Marine Corps. I actually got out for a couple of years.
So you're a retread?
I stayed in the same MOS.
Okay.
So retread is a new MOS. So.
All right. Okay.
I went right back to the exact same unit. I left as a sergeant, and 2 years later, I returned as a lance corporal.
Ouch.
Yeah. So actually, there's some good things to that. But my brother, when I was looking at the various military services, I wanted a challenge and I wanted to go with the best. And then my brother was like, "Hey, you're a smart kid. You really should." As my older brother, you should really look at some sort of intelligence and maybe use it as a springboard to like the CIA or something. So when the recruiter called me and said, "Hey, did you ever think of joining the Marine Corps?" I'm like, "Yes." You started salivating, I'm sure.
Right.
You ever think of what you wanted to do? And I said, intelligence. And he said, well, that's closed right now, but I tell you what we can do. We can send you down to MEPS, and where it says job will just right open. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
You call me when intelligence is open. It's like, okay. 9 months later, he calls me and says intelligence is open. I'm like, okay, I'll sign up. They send me down to MEPS. Get down there, do my physical, pass it. They say, okay, well, which type of intelligence do you want? I'm like, there's types. Okay, which one? What are they? Like, well, we have some tapes, old VHS tapes with a big push down. So I tell you, whoever did the 2600 tape in the late 80s deserves a medal, because they stick in the O2 tape first, right? And it shows this, what we used to call squinties. This guy looking through a magnifying glass at a map, looking at lines, all this stuff. It's like, well, that don't look very fun. Then they put in the 2600 tape, and it was guys jumping out of airplanes, guys rolling around in LAVs, and I'll have that. And that's how I ended up in this field.
There wasn't anybody in UDT shorts coming out of the water at Camp Lejeune or anything like that?
No. It was jumping out of planes and riding in LAVs.
You know what video I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I want to see if I can get my hands on both of those videos. I think that'd be interesting for some of the younger Marines to witness. As a matter of fact, I'm trying to get in touch with Tom Dean. I'd like to
he's around here.
To have him on. Yeah, so I told the story to one of the sergeants out at 3rd Radio Battalion when I did his interview, that prior to even hitting the fleet, I got promoted to sergeant here at San Angelo, but before I did,
wow.
I was a 3-year clearance holder in Monterey.
Oof.
So that was my Cali tour, for lack of a better term. But he pulls me into his office, me and another sergeant, and he essentially proceeds to shake the cobwebs loose and say, "Hey, you're getting ready to hit the fleet as a sergeant, and you need to be ready. And these are some of the things you need to be considering." And it helped because I hit the ground running. Mm-hmm. Like I said earlier, in conversation, they immediately punched me out to Bolivia as a Spanish linguist. It wasn't a SIGINT deployment. It was with SOTG as a Riverine training team member, and it was an awesome first kind of broad brush glimpse of what I could expect out of Camp Lejeune. And then, I get back, deployed to Haiti, get back, go to Iraq, get back, and they sent me to SOTG, and the rest is history. But Tom Dean's words, meant something to me. And you having spent time out here in San Angelo as an instructor, what was that like for you?
I will say that being a schoolhouse instructor is probably the best thing I ever did, not only for my Marine Corps career, but just for life in general.
That's a bold statement.
It is. I was always one of the shy kids. My parents split when I was young. I kind of, for lack of a better term, kind of raised myself. So I just didn't really put myself out there, and I'm still pretty much a quiet guy, ish. But when I got here, and I think that my senior enlisted at Menwith Hill, because I had just gotten married at Menwith Hill, and I think he called the monitor. I didn't know anything about monitors back then. I just went where I was told. I was as young staff sergeant, and I think he worked with the monitor and said, "Hey, this guy's getting married. Let's get him something other than going back to Raiding Battalion and deploying," because we were in the middle of 7 and 5s at the time. And so they sent me here. And the first thing you go through is the basic instructor course, and then the advanced instructor course, and the instructor supervisor and all that.
Oh, yeah.
And when I got here, I was not good at getting in front of people and talking. But you have to do it, and they teach you how to do it. Now you can't shut me up. The life skill of being able to get in front of somebody, spend a couple seconds gathering your thoughts, organizing them, and then speaking to your topic. It's done me wonders.
Right.
And I always tell the young Marines, even if they should become school instructors, and promotion boards look at that very favorably. Because it's not 2,600 sitting on them promotion boards. I've had a lot of Marines, I don't want to go to schoolhouse. I don't want to lose relevancy. It might hurt my promotions. That's
a huge misconception.
Exactly. And it's like, one, the best way to learn something is to teach it.
That's true.
Two, the guy sitting on the promotion boards, schoolhouse instructor, check. That looks really good. But also the having just to get in front of people and speak, and actually having people come in and evaluate you doing that. You said 3 ums, you said what have you.
Right.
I still do that. When I go to OAGs, about the 4th I start counting. But you learn that. And so that's a skill. I tell young Marines, if you don't become a school instructor, join Toastmasters. Learn to talk to people. Learn to give up and give a briefing, things like that. So,
first time I heard somebody mention Toastmasters.
Yeah. It's kind of a social thing, because you can do it in a friendly environment, but get the feedback.
Yeah.
So
I didn't know that was still a thing.
Yeah, they still have them.
So, at what point in time during your career did you actively start to seek out mentors? Because for me, that's something that I see that's kind of missing. And me, I being 23 when I joined, I learned a lot from the older kids around me. I had to, growing up in Galveston, and I had some really, really solid older brothers, for lack of a better term, that took care of me and kept me out of trouble. And when I joined the Marine Corps, I didn't see it any differently. It was pretty much the same thing. And as a young Lance Corporal, you're looking at, especially in Monterey, you're looking at those staff NCOs that are fleet returnees, your platoon sergeants, your platoon commanders that had all this experience in my eyes, and I wanted to learn as much as I could prior to getting out to the fleet. At what point in time did you start to do that, and what would you recommend junior Marines consider in applying that approach?
I would say I never, and this may go contrary to popular thought, but I would say I never actually actively sought out mentors. Growing up the way I did, I pretty much raised myself from the age of 8. I'm just kind of used to doing my own thing, but I do observe. the first, I would guess you would say the first real mentor I had was after I'd come back in, and I was a young sergeant. Well, I would say young. I was 30, okay. But I was a sergeant, and at the time, my MU staff NCOIC was Gunnery Sergeant Chris Watson. I don't know if you know him. He was a Spanish linguist as well.
I don't.
But he was the first one that I would truly call a mentor. I didn't necessarily actively seek him out, but he was the first one that kind of took me under his wing and said, hey, you might want to look at doing this, look at doing that. That's, they say know yourself and seek self-improvement, and know your strengths and weaknesses. Probably that's always been my weakness, is I don't ask for help.
Okay.
I try to do it myself.
I think there's a lot of us with that flaw. If you
exactly.
Call it that.
I think I'm getting better with it, but
it's also a strength too, right? Because you look inward for that fortitude.
Yep.
Required to kind of get through some of those rough times.
I would say the one thing you asked about what I would pass to the junior Marines is observe everything, and you will learn from every leader, good and bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I had several toxic leaders, which made me get out. And I made a conscious decision when I came back in that I would make sure that I never repeated those things that I thought was wrong. So that would be the biggest thing. Mentorship doesn't have to be a formal relationship. It doesn't have to be hey, can you please guide me?
Right.
Just watching somebody, good and bad, is a form of mentorship.
I concur. So, one of the things that I see is a lot of times, because these Marines can be so insulated, that and I'm no expert or anything, but I think that's one of the I guess conditions that set the environment such that when young Marines are going through a difficult time, they won't reach out for help. And I'm sure you've seen that in your experience over the years. What have you done as the operations chief of a battalion to encourage or to cultivate an environment where Marines talk to one another in order to kind of keep an eye on things, to make sure everybody's in an even space?
That's a difficult one. Again, especially coming from where I am. My rock is my wife. So that's kind of what I tell them, is find your rock, whomever that may be. Everyone has to have a rock somewhere that they can bounce ideas off of that knows them. I know the Marine Corps is real big on, hey, talk to each other, or talk to your platoon, or talk to your squad. But it's got to be somebody you trust.
Yeah.
And trust is, I've got trust issues, so that's always been a really big thing with me. There's really only about 2 people in this world that I 100% really trust, and one of them is my wife. So I tell them just, hey, find your rock that you can confide in, and confide in them, whomever it is, somebody that knows you and will know when you're having a bad day.
Okay. So, is there anything that you saw as a sergeant, or maybe in your junior time in the Marine Corps, that you kind of brought to the table as you assumed the position or the billet of being the battalion ops chief, in order to kind of alleviate some of those bad experiences from continuing on as a trend with your unit?
The thing I have learned, probably, and it's not necessarily stuff I learned as a sergeant, actually. The stuff, in my younger days, the toxic leadership that I had in my really young days, I kind of, those are my staff sergeants and gunny, so I imposed those when I was a staff sergeant gunny. As a master gunnery sergeant, I looked to the good and bad examples at that time. I like to think I've learned a little bit from master sergeant to master gunnery sergeant. I'm very hard on myself. I am very driven, and in my earlier days as a master sergeant, I was very hard on my Marines. I think bring it to the battalion ops level. I would like to think that I've learned a little bit that to relax a little bit on that. Just because it's not my way doesn't mean it's wrong. Just because it's not the way I would do it doesn't mean it's wrong. I've learned to delegate more. I don't think I delegated much, even as a master sergeant. I don't think I delegated much. I've learned that a little bit as master sergeant. I really rely on my master sergeants, my company operations chiefs, to do what they got to do.
Is that the hardest, I guess, rank to mentor? Because they're kind of set in their ways, and I mean, they've established themselves as leaders and professionals at that point in time, but to get them to adopt a different perspective.
Yeah. Actually, I have not found that so much, actually, with my master sergeants. I've got a pretty good crop right now, and they're relatively young, but I think what I've tried to do with them, like when I first took the position, when I got to battalion, that was when they still had 2 master guns at the battalion, so I started in the OCAC. But when my predecessor left and I took over as the battalion ops chief, and then I was running solo. One of the first things I did was I took all my master sergeants and I took them up to Mount Whitney. Okay. And we did a 2 or 3 day hike up Mount Whitney. Just one of the little team building type things, but just
master gun and his master sergeant.
Master guns and master sergeants, just get out there and hey, let's go have a good time. We didn't top out because even though I told them to bring ice axes, and nobody brought the appropriate equipment. So once it got a little sketchy and I thought somebody's going to fall down this mountain and die, I'm like, okay, I can see my career flashing before my eyes. So we're going back down the hill. But just spending a couple of days out with my master sergeants outside of work, some shared hardship, and things like that. And I found my master sergeants really want to, they really want to give back to the community. They really want to do more than just be a SIGINT, or they want to be a leader in the field. So again, I've been lucky. I've been blessed. So, I haven't had to do. I've not had anybody fight me. Let's just put it that way.
Okay. So one of the things that I've been hearing recently in conversations, not just within our community, but throughout the force, has been that there's a perception that we're weakest at staff sergeant. Would you agree with that, or do you? And a lot of that is stemming, I think, from a sense of the fact that they're not being developed as they transition from sergeant into the staff and CO ranks in a sufficient manner. Has that been your observation? And if so, what have you done to kind of to shore that gap up? And if you don't think that's true, why do you think that that's the perception?
I think the perception is there, and I think there is definitely some validity to it, but I also think it's somewhat our fault as well as a result of circumstances. 15 years of war. Yeah. We've gotten used to 7 and 5 rotations. We've gotten used to falling in the equipment already there. And everything
that still bothers me.
Yeah, and everything was, hey, let's get out there and let's do the job, which is great. I mean, and the Marines and the staff NCOs have definitely, they've proved themselves in battle. It's definitely not going to take away anything from what they've done, because, I mean, it's been a rough 15 years, and our staff NCOs nowadays, they joined knowing the war was going.
They did.
They joined knowing, hey, when I joined in the 80s,
What year?
89. So, yeah. So, actually, when I was telling you earlier, the recruiter hit me up and said, hey, oh, no, SIGINT's not. That was in 88. So, when I joined, it was like, I want to say it was a job, but it was almost that. These kids joined knowing they were going to war.
Yeah.
So
because back then in the Reagan era, Reagan Bush era, we were thinking, contemplating Cold War, but the Berlin Wall had come down by that point in time, and
and see,
it didn't seem to be a realistic expectation.
When I was in boot camp, that's when Just Cause in Panama went down.
Right.
And, I mean, the drill instructors were freaking out. We're going to war. We're going to war, And, they were, I mean, just the training we got just changed. And then it was over in like 3 days. I'm like, okay, never mind. But these kids joined it, so absolutely not taking anything away. It's just a matter of circumstance. They've not been trained in all the little things that we used to have to do. How to get a ship on MEU. I've put out 4 MEUs since I've been the ops chief, and not a single one of my MEU staff NCOICs had ever been on ship.
Ouch.
Ever.
So so as a staff sergeant, I was fortunate enough to get the opportunity to be a MEU staff NCOIC. I just
as a staff sergeant.
As a staff sergeant,
wow.
I just pinned on my rocker, and Master Guns Owen gave me the nod. Said, "You can do this. It's going to be tough."
Yeah.
And they stacked my deck. I had some really, really strong subordinates, and I had some strong lieutenants. So they didn't completely overwhelm me with that burden, but they set me up for success.
How'd you find it with not being able to get into the chief's mess?
It was tough.
Because you don't get nothing done on a ship without the chiefs.
So there were a couple of times where, because you don't get chief's mess, there's the Navy line, the Marine line, and the E6 line to get on the chow hall. And then when we would have chief's mess chief's meetings, right? Not Navy chief, but Marine section chiefs meetings in the chief's mess, and I just couldn't walk in.
Yeah.
That was just that. Those are just the rules of the ship. You're in their house.
Yeah.
You play by their rules, and if you want things to continue to be smooth for you, respect the goat locker.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. No problem with that. Fortunately for me, I had some gunnies that were, because we had so many gunnies that were living in the Staff Sergeant berthing with me, and I kind of pinged them out. One of which is a Master Guns that's out with me at 3MAF, an EOD guy, Master Gunny Williams.
And so you had somebody to carry your water for you.
So basically, he'd say, "Oh, come on, Castro, let's go," and he'd escort me in. But if he wasn't available, I'd sit out there and wait for some fat Navy chief to get out of his recliner, eating his frozen yogurt to open the door and let me in. There was one time that I got into it because I kept knocking. They wouldn't open the door. And I was just about a minute late. And I said, "To hell with this." I opened the door. And then, of course, that's when they kind of come up and they start to charge me. And I told them, "I've been knocking outside this hatch for 3.5 minutes and no one answered. I need to get into this meeting. I'm late already." And eventually, one of the sergeant major was there to kind of rescue me. But it was one of those things where it was a learning experience, and it was my first float.
Yep.
I had helped a lot of MEU detachments and prepped them up when I was at SOTG as an instructor. But to have my own was a daunting challenge.
Yeah.
Would you ever send a staff sergeant out as a MEU det staff in COIC?
I have not yet, and for that exact reason, I want to send gunnies because they can have that ability to get in the mess.
Right.
So, but even my gunnies have never been on ship. So, going back to your original question, some of that perception. I mean, it's a perception, but it's also our fault. We need to mentor these Marines in those things that they've never had to do. How do you move a unit from here to there? How do you pack up your equipment and go? How do you we have this discussion all the time when we're talking with our 4 on how to go somewhere. The 4's talking about, I need an embark rep, and the companies will say, "Why do you need an embark rep? We got S4s." Every det I've ever been on has had an embark rep, Right. Yeah, somebody on the, paint the circles and do all that other stuff, I mean, we don't put maps in the big 6 cubes anymore, but it's still the same thing. But it's just they've never learned how to move.
Yeah.
They're much better at the SIGINT than we ever were. But it's all the other stuff behind it that we need to teach them how to do.
Yeah. And I think our embark NCO was our EM tech, now that I think about it.
Yeah.
We kind of swung, we kind of slid by on that one. But one interesting aspect about that deployment was that our 2 chief was actually a 2691.
Nice.
It was Mike Smith.
So was your rap in that Major Smith?
It was Major Moffett,
Oh, okay.
but Captain Smith was the 2 Alpha.
Like Captain Sean Smith?
I think that was his first name.
Yeah, that's my current boss.
Yeah. so they floated together.
Yeah, Smith and Smith. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I remember he was when we did when we got our shell back. We were running through the ceremony. He was tasked with running around with the egg beaters, screaming, "This is a drill! This is a drill! This is a drill!" That was funny. Great memories. But you would think that having that relationship with the 2 chief would have made things easier for me. I will say for the record that having that familiarity kind of made things a little bit more difficult because we knew each other, and sometimes when we butted heads, of course, it could get heated.
Sometimes if and we find the same thing if you're working with a MFG2 who used to be a SIGINTer, a little bit of knowledge can be a dangerous thing. So sometimes it's easier when the person you're feeding information to takes it at face value rather than putting their own spin on it.
Right. So is there anything that you didn't get accomplished as a battalion ops chief as you're kind of heading to this to greener pastures, so to speak, that you wish you would have been able to see through to fruition?
Not anything that I didn't get accomplished, but if you were to say a regret, I wish I would have spent more time with the individual Marines. So, you get so wrapped up into what you're doing at the battalion and planning operations, planning exercises, planning all that you really don't spend enough time with the individual Marines eyeball to eyeball, and picking up on, what they've got. Because I'm telling you, this current crowd we have is, they grew up with technology. So,
definitely.
I'm glad I'm not having to try to keep pace with them from the technological perspective, because I'm more in the management role, and that's kind of probably where I should be, because there's no way I can keep up with what they do nowadays. It's just wow.
Yeah, they continue to impress me. I've got a little tribe of 51s that I share an office space with there at the MEF, and some of the things that come out of their mouths during the day, and some of the things that I've seen in my interactions with them just completely blows me away. They still have this the concept of play, where they play with the technology, and through play they learn and develop skills and self-acquired skills that are just intrinsically motivated. I'm not forcing them to do this stuff. They do it on their own. And what I've tried to do is, when and where I can, create the opportunities for them to explore even further and channel those that initiative and that creative aptitude that they have into a positive direction, and teach them to tie that motivation, that initiative, that effort into something that would benefit the warfighting organization as a whole. Mm-hmm. And I've seen some glimpses of that so far. But part of it is the understanding that I'm just in my position there at the MEF. I can create space for them to be able to maneuver like that in a way that I wouldn't have the opportunity to do so as if I was still a staff sergeant or a gunny. But one of the things I wanted to ask you was, you've got little ones, right? You said like they're 6 and 8, or
one is 8 and one's 9.
Okay. How exposed are they to technology? From your perspective of seeing what that translates into, that early exposure into our junior Marines of today, do you see that as a good thing, such that you've incorporated into your family life, or do you kind of take a little bit more conservative approach to that, and to ensure that they don't go too deep, too far, too fast?
I think partly because we were older when we had our children, they kind of take on our attitudes as, even without us pushing on them. And the same thing we did from our parents. And my parents were older when they had me. So my kids, they know how to use technology, but they're not tied to it like their peers. They don't have phones. They both have Kindle tablets, but they don't use them very often. They'd rather read a book.
My boys are the same way.
Yeah.
Something about turning the pages.
Exactly. We did get them Kindles for their birthdays, and they were happy with that. But they still go to the paper mostly. My boy actually causes a little bit of a riot at school because they're always taking photos at school, and his first thing that he says is, "Don't post this on Facebook. I don't want to be on Facebook." So, and they come to us and go, "What?" I'm like, "It's his likeness. It's his choice," and they just can't believe we give him that kind of power. But it's his face, not mine.
Right.
So my kids are. I don't want to say
why should Zuckerberg have it in his database if he doesn't want it to be there? So
they can. They're aware of technology, but they don't really use it. Again, they know how to use tablets. They know how to use computers, but they would much rather do things analog, and that's probably because me and my wife do the same.
Okay. So what do you do with the family from a recreational standpoint? Like, what are some of the things that the Dauberts do when they're not at home and they're out?
Some of the things that the Dauberts do. We like to try just about everything. So recently we kind of diverged into each of our own hobbies. My most recent thing that I started this year is paragliding. So I go off once, usually one day a weekend.
Sure, my stomach queasy when you said that.
Oh, it's awesome. My wife's recently gotten into her violin and fiddling, so she does that. The boy wants to start playing baseball. The girl does ballet and gym. As a family, we like to go camping. We like to go hiking. It's mostly outdoors related.
Right.
So.
Kayaking and fishing.
Yep. Kayaking, fishing.
Any hunting? I guess you can't.
We're in California. I guess technically we could. My kids they say they're queasy about hunting. My wife growing up in the UK, she was real queasy about all that. But interestingly enough, the first time when I was back at my parents' house in Missouri, we went back for Thanksgiving, and I went deer hunting, and I got a deer. And at the time, my wife wasn't sure whether she was going to let my kids watch me clean the deer, but she went ahead and let them do it. And interestingly, my daughter, who we had trouble getting her to eat. After that, no issues. She would eat because I think she connected it and realized
she knows where
food came from. So the boy doesn't want anything to do with killing animals, but he definitely wants to blow things up and shoot arrows and do all that other stuff.
What about fishing?
We have a phrase in my family. It's called fishing, not catching.
Okay. So I grew up on Galveston Island, and so I could take a cast net, a bucket, a little package of chicken, some string, and turn that into crabs, shrimp, flounder, speckled trout.
Yep.
Come back with a full catch, just in a few hours.
We don't catch much out there, but I do go lobstering, and I catch lobsters, and the kids love to watch me dispatch the lobsters. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't start eating lobster until my adult life. There's not a lot of lobster around the Gulf of Mexico, as you can imagine. But I do have a flavor for it. But I enjoy a good red snapper. And the boys, when we were stationed in the Dominican Republic, we were members at the sailing club, and they used to serve what they call a chillo frito, which is just a red snapper, but it's deep fried. So you get the whole thing from head to tail. Some of our friends would be a little queasy at that, but my youngest son and I, we could split the whole fish, just the two of us, and they serve it on it's kind of like they call it yaniqueque, but it's like a pan fried, like a bread crispy bread, and then maybe some French fries on the side. And we'd eat that and hang out there. And we picked up sailing. So my boys, being outdoors types, who also have that dual aspect or component of being computer and video game nerds as well. But and my oldest son, he just recently, you mentioned your wife playing the violin. He played the trumpet for, I guess, about the last 5 years or so. But he just recently taught himself to play the violin. And it was strange because we bought it used from one of our colleagues in the embassy, good friends of ours, and her sons just weren't playing it, and so she sold it to us, and it had sat in the closet for quite a while. Because we thought he might pick it up one day, but he wanted to stick with the trumpet, and that's where it stayed. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, just like this year, just pulled it out and just started playing music that he already knew from playing the trumpet. And then he just started, because the internet is the internet. He can get the sheet music for just about anything you can imagine. He started playing the introduction song for Game of Thrones and stuff like that. That was very surprising. Kids will throw you for a loop. Just give them half a second. Besides your outdoor activities, what are you reading? What does Master Guns Daubert read? What
do I read? I mainly read nonfiction, but I have been trying to expand my boundaries a little bit and actually start reading fiction. So. Trying to get into the classics. I grew up in the Ozarks, so I grew up outside.
What do you consider the classics?
Let's see. There's all kinds of classics, but the one I just recently finished was Pride and Prejudice.
Okay.
It's Jane Austen. So.
How'd you like it?
It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. So it's still the only really books I read growing up were all had to do with outdoors. So a lot of Jack London, things like that.
I love Jack London.
Exactly. So I grew up in the Ozarks.
Did you ever read The Seawolf?
I don't think I had that. I was the White Fang, the Call of the Wild, all that.
Yeah. So
I kind of grew up looking west to the Rockies and to Alaska. I still want to go to Alaska one day. I have this urge to go to the highest point in every state. So I've been doing that.
What started that?
Just ever since I was a kid, mountains called to me. So
okay.
In Missouri, you grow up. Everyone goes up Tom Sauk Mountain, but it's only a couple thousand feet. Then I got stationed in Colorado and went up the highest one there. And
how was that?
It was being stationed or the mountain?
Being stationed there.
Being stationed there. I loved it. The job was very, very stressful. I got there at a particular time in history that required a lot of effort and a lot of the heart and soul. I was on the job a week and a half when the Aurora Theater shooting went down. I had 5 Marines in that theater.
Wow.
Yeah, 3 of them in the kill room. That was my first exposure to the job, and it just never let up from there. There was just one thing after another. So the stress kind of took away from the enjoyment of the place. But just being in the mountains was great. And it was something I always wanted. I always wanted one of my own companies, one of the MCSB companies. So that was, I enjoyed that, and, still keep in touch with a lot of the guys I had there. Master Sergeant Ward, he's still Master Sergeant now. Master Sergeant Cross was one of my Marines there. So I still keep in touch with a lot of the guys from there, but it was stressful. But I still, I enjoyed it from both the personal and professional standpoint.
And some good friends of mine just retired out in Colorado a few years back, and they're loving it out there. It's one of the things that we thought about recently was going out to visit them. Mm-hmm. Being from Texas, though, and we didn't get a lot of snow growing up. I don't know if I could be around that much snow on a regular basis.
My wife wasn't much for it. Actually, going back to the highest points in the state, the first one we did actually was the first highest state point my wife and I did. We went up Guadalupe Peak in Texas.
Okay.
A lot of people don't realize there's mountains in Texas.
Oh, yeah.
Like 9,000 some odd feet. So elk and everything. So that was kind of what started it.
Yeah, we when we were kids, I was just telling a story recently to one of the other master sergeants at our social event that we used to go up. My oldest uncle used to take myself, his two sons, and my brother and another cousin all throughout the state parks here in Texas, and we'd go see some of the universities. Kind of let's go out, have some adventures, but keep in mind that there's plans for you guys somewhere down the road, and those are great experiences. One of the places that we were just talking about today was Master Sergeant Insminger was Enchanted Rock. But there's a lot of little niche parks around here.
There was one down near, I want to say it was down near San Antonio. It was not Elephant Rocks, that's Missouri, but there's some weird rock thing. You can go climb these.
I think that's Enchanted Rock.
Enchanted Rock, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we went down there when we were stationed here as well.
Yep.
Yeah, that was very pretty.
What'd you like about Texas while you were here?
What I liked about Texas when I was here was I would say the food, the driving. You go down the highway, you come up behind somebody, they get out your way, they go off to the side.
Yeah.
They don't do that in California.
No, they don't. They don't. I can confirm that one.
The pace of life. I mean, I grew up in the Ozarks, so I grew up around horses and all that other stuff. So it was a nice return to that for me. A little bit of a shock for my wife because this was our first duty station after we got married, so it was our first place after the United Kingdom, and she's from London, so it was a bit of a culture shock for her. But we like that. The pace of life, and then the job. This was where I really found my passion for teaching and instructing. My bachelor's, I got my bachelor's. I finished it after I left here, but I started while I was here. And I originally started in business management because I was going to go to business and all that. And that's what I got my bachelor's in. But after instructing here, I actually got my master's in adult education because, this really lit that fire in me of, passing on knowledge and passing on training and seeing people get it. It's
right.
It lit a fire in me.
Do you think that's something you'd want to do post Marine Corps?
No, absolutely. That is actually that's what I'm looking for, is some sort of adult education and training.
To continue within the IC or external?
Everywhere.
It doesn't matter?
Everywhere. We're not people that like to keep our, a rolling stone gathers no moss, so okay. I want to do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So I'll do a little bit of university work if I can. I'll do a little bit of IC work if I can, just whatever's coming.
So you're at what point in your career? How many years do you have in now?
I'm at 27 active. 27
active. What is a Master Guns learning?
What am I learning?
What is a Master Guns learning? I mean, can you still teach an old dog new tricks?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like I was telling you before, I didn't learn it at Master Sergeant. The biggest thing I've learned in the last 3 years is one, how to let go and let people do their thing. How to delegate. I know I will never get as smart on the actual SIGINT as the younger kids, and that's fine. What I need to use my position for and learn about, especially with my upcoming new position, is plans and policies, and how I can enable those kids, how I can make sure that the YAC field gets what it needs.
Okay. If not for the Marines, where would you be?
Where would I be? Oh, good Lord. Well, I actually got out for a couple of years, so this probably makes it a little bit easier. This is part of the reason why I knew this was the right thing for me. I did 6 years and got out for 2. And when I got out, I did a little bit of this, a little bit of that. For nearly the first year, I managed a truck stop. And I just got bored with that. And then after that, I was like, okay, this isn't me. It's true what they say, you can never go home again. I started exploring coming back in at that time, and the Marine Corps said, hey, you got to go back down to Lance Corporal to come back in. I'm like, got as a sergeant to come back. Ooh, that's rough,
Yeah.
So I looked at, the Army's like, we'll make you a staff sergeant in 6 months.
Of course.
And I thought, I did think about that. And I've always wanted to fly. I mean, hence the paragliding now. I still, flying is a draw of mine. So I looked at, the Army Warrant Officer Pilot Program, but I started looking and I started talking, and our fire chief in town, who had been, I knew him as an old Marine and all that. And he was the scout leader growing up and all that. And everyone, a little tiny town, everyone knew him.
Right.
I got to talking to him about it and I found out he'd actually retired from the Army as a warrant officer. I said, I never knew you were in the Army, because everything on his vehicle was Marine. And he never told anyone that he had been in the Army, even though he's a retired Army Chief Warrant Officer 3. And in intelligence as well. So, but he was just proud. He was a gunny before he transferred over, and he was only proud of his Marine Corps time. And I'm like, that's a sign, that I'm just not meant for the Army life. I mean, and nothing against the Army. My grandpa was a retired colonel. My dad was in the Army. I was the first one to go anything other than the Army in my entire family on both sides.
How'd they feel about that?
I don't think my dad thought I was going to make it.
Really?
Yeah, I really, I just told him one day, hey, I signed up, but I need you to sign the papers. Okay. Freaking recruiter knocks the door, he opens up, it's a Marine, he just turns around and looks at me. I don't think he thought I was going to make it. But that just drove me more, I think most Marines, we come with baggage. We're here if we were just after a job or just to serve our country, we would join another service. We joined the Marine Corps because we got something to prove, whether it's to ourselves, whether it's to our families. We're trying to prove something.
What did you have to prove?
To be honest, I don't think it's anything you can really put your finger on and say that that's what you got to do. But I guess in retrospect, to prove to my dad that I wasn't, I was the youngest kid, and I just don't think he thought I had the wherewithal to do it. So, just to prove that I could do it and I could be the best. 27
years in, Master Gunnery Sergeant. I think you've proven yourself, huh?
No, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, your reasons change things, but that's definitely what brought me in the first place.
You touched on something, and I couldn't agree more. Your reasons change over the years. I came in because I was just floundering, and all this potential, but no positive channel to direct it into. Tried my hand at college and got bored with that. It didn't appeal to me at the time, and just by a twist of circumstances, and I found myself on the Yellow Footprints. A lot of it had to do with a good woman who's still by my side to this day. She was just finishing up her master's degree, and I was, waiting tables. The writing was on the wall. I needed to get it together, or just things were not going to be the same. And I was ready for something to be out there, and I knew something was out there that was for me. And I had toyed with the idea of the military before, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And then kind of finding my way at the recruiter's office and talking to Staff Sergeant Whiteside, and he asked me, he said, what do you want to do? And he put those tabs in front of me, and of course everything like you just mentioned, everything that I picked out were those intangible things, and adventure and leadership opportunities and all of that stuff. Nothing to do with money, nothing to do with benefits or any of those. Now I would see as objectively better aspects of the organization. But what I joined for was that camaraderie, that fellowship, that all of those things, and boy did I get that. But over time, your motivations do change, and I think now for me, one of the primary reasons why I've stuck around is because of the fact that I had great leaders ahead of me that spurred me on to excellence and pushed me in ways that I didn't know how it was going to turn out. I didn't want to let them down, right? And I had a wife and children dependent on me. So a lot of that, came into play. When I hit the fleet as a sergeant, my oldest had already been born. And that experience completely changed me. So you check in 2000, it was 2003, I think, in 2002, 2003, and there's a war going on, and I knew that it was just a matter of time before I was going to be over there, getting after it, but with a wife and child at the house, it was one of those things where you were fighting for a little bit more, and so like you mentioned, with a lot of these junior Marines, they came in knowing what they were getting into, and that's not something that most people acknowledge or give credit to with this generation. Things have kind of died down a little bit, but with things being on an uneasy and uneven ground geopolitically, who knows what could pop up, but yet still these young Marines, they're right in it. And I've talked to some guys like today there's the young sergeant, one of the TSOC instructors, and just hearing him talk about his approach to being on the podium, it just motivated me to hear that there's that generation. This generation has a new crew of fire breathing young NCOs that are really looking to kind of pass on their experiences to the Marines coming up behind them, and I think more than anything that has I guess inspired me to continue to stick with it, and not just be involved, but be committed to the not only the warfighting organization in its entirety, but most particularly the Ockfield, because I have an obligation to the Marines that are coming up behind me, and definitely an obligation to the Marines that went before me that mentored me and pushed me into this position. But you're coming up at the end of 27, so you only got so much longer. What does that mean to you, and how are you approaching your day-to-day, I guess, routine? When you drive in the morning, what are you thinking about? Because there's only so many more of those mornings left. Mm-hmm. And what's going on in your head? Do you feel like a, not necessarily a sense of impending doom, but that sunset coming along?
Not at the moment. I still every day is not really changed much in probably the last 10, 15 years. I come to work hoping to give it my all. I've always approached it as long as I'm still enjoying it and I can still hang, then I'll keep doing it. So start every morning with my PT session. That's kind of where I clear my mind and do my thinking. Beat the traffic by getting in early and then PTing. And then just what's the task of the day. So I'll probably be that way all the way up until the end, and it's just one day they go, "Oh, you can no longer come here,"
Right.
So
do you have to row for your PFT?
I technically I can, but I'll never do that. Although I will say it's harder to row than people think.
I've heard that several times. I want to give it a shot, not for score, obviously, but just to get a...
Absolutely. My wife's saying, well, you should learn how to do it in case you
have to.
Yeah, well, not only in case you have to, but if, hey, if you can get 100 points doing it, why not, So I got up there. She actually used to row competitively in college in the UK. So,
okay.
So she's...
yeah, that's big over there, isn't it?
Yeah. So in order to get 100 points at my age, you have to maintain. I want to say it's like a 2 minute for 500 meters or something like that. So she brings me to one of those things and puts me up there, and she's like, "Okay, row," and I'm doing like 240, 230, 220, average, and I'm just rowing like crazy. She's over there, just looking like she's trying to take a nap and read a book, and she's doing it in like 145
because she's efficient,
because she knows how to do it. Exactly. So if you can learn how to do it, apparently it's good. But I don't know. I will still always measure myself by the old standard, because for 27 years it was 20, 18 minutes, 100. Well, used to be 80 sit-ups. So I will still, even though I only have to do 19 pull-ups, I'm still going to try to do 20, and I'm still, even though I get more points for it, I'm still going to try to run the same pace I always ran. So, no, there's not really an impending doom. I'm sure I'll feel a little disconnect, I guess you will, when I go to the next place. I guess that's, if I'm fortunate on anything, it's the fact that I'll only be there 2.5 years, 3 years. That I'll never be that guy that's that far disconnected from the operating forces.
Right.
In that position, so I will still be relatively close to it by the time I have to retire. I really, the only thing is, I guess, probably my growth is that in the last couple of years I've started looking at how can I give back to the field rather than just accomplish my mission. How can I, leave the place better than I found it.
Right. So the individual taking over for you will be Shep?
Correct.
What words of wisdom do you have for him?
Last time I actually worked with Shep, we were both living in the barracks at Camp Lejeune. So, So he was Corporal Shepherd then. Now he's Now he's Master Gunnery Sergeant Shepherd. So big difference. I'm going to try to give him, as complete of a turnover binder as I can. But probably the words of wisdom, and I want to say I learned this most at Alpha Company is lean on your staff NCOs, mentor your staff NCOs, get the buy-in of your staff NCOs. In my early days of Company A in Colorado, I didn't do that. It was a little bit of a me versus them type of thing, and that didn't work well.
Yeah, I can't imagine it would.
No. You got to get the buy-in to your staff NCOs. So I do that all the time. When I don't do the staff NCO slate by myself, I bring in all my master sergeants. I bring in my first sergeants, and we sit down and we discuss every Marine. I bring in the sergeant major. I've got a really good working relationship right now with the 8999s in the battalion.
Is that hard? Is that hard to establish? It
wasn't for me. I have seen in my past. I mean, we've all grown up with it. The 8999 versus the 26 whatever. I think that's changed just culturally over probably the past 5 or 8 years. I actually went to first sergeant's course because I knew I was going to Company A, and that's basically an 89 billet. And then I also went to sergeant major's course. Part of that was because do you know Rick Hawkins?
I don't know Rick Hawkins.
Okay, Rick Hawkins is one of the staff mentors up at Marine Corps University. I first met him when I was a young sergeant, and he was a sergeant major at 2nd Radio.
Okay.
So he's one of my old sergeant majors. So he tries to bring in the master sergeants, the master gunnery sergeants into the first sergeant and the sergeant major's course. So I went to both of those.
Awesome.
And one of the things that this sergeant major's course they actually mentioned was that they called it the first week was what they used to say was kind of sniffing each other's butts and seeing what you got and all that. And but there was none of that at this one. He's like, and then he realized that every single sergeant major, and then I was the only master gunny in there, but every single one in the course had all been to SEPME, which is they bring the first sergeants and the master sergeants together. So all of the sergeant majors going to sergeant major course now have been in a course with, when they were first sergeants, with master sergeants, and getting that cross breeding.
Right.
So I think there's a lot less of that
because of that.
I think that course is a huge part of it. It's the interaction with each other, at that level, to see the different sides of it. So,
but it's interesting you say that, because one of the I guess criticisms that I've heard over the years about our enlisted PME is the fact that the only major takeaway is the interaction you get with your peer groups. And I have to ask you, Master Guns, is that sufficient? I mean, shouldn't being an individual such as yourself who spent time on the podium and who's got his degrees in education and has the aspiration to do more adult training and education, do you think that our enlisted PME is where it needs to be? Especially when you look at the NDS, when you look at the mock, you look at the FOE, message to the force. I think all of those guiding documents point to a much more, I want to say, laser sharp, precision staff and CO leader. Mm-hmm. Do you think that our enlisted PME currently is addressing that?
To be honest, I can only speak. My time is dated, so I can't speak to what the staff sergeant course is like now and what the career course is like now. Because I went to career course in.
That's me.
I went to career course in 02. I went to advanced course in 07. So I'm sure they've changed. When I got to SEPME, it was a lot less lecture. It was a lot more problem-based learning, for lack of a better term, us discussing things and us working through things. And I learned a lot of things like, man, I wish I'd known this as a staff sergeant. So I know they spoke at the time that's what they were trying to go to. I can't speak to what they're currently teaching, but if they're doing that problem-based type learning, then I think that's where they need to go, rather than the passing on of the knowledge and the lecture. Present problems and make them work through it.
So let's talk about Sergeant Daubert. What's that look for?
I would not have wanted to be Sergeant Daubert's leader, I'll tell you that.
So if I've asked this of quite a few of my guests, if I could present you, let's say Master Sergeant Castro figured out how to fold time space, and I could transport you back to a smoke pit, and you could have maybe 2 hours with Sergeant Daubert, how would that conversation go?
Let's see.
Maybe the first Sergeant Daubert.
The first, yeah. There were two Sergeant Dauberts actually. My first time in and my second time in.
And if the answer would be different for the two sergeants, I'm okay with that too.
The first Sergeant Daubert was counting the days till he got out. He had been on the float from hell with some serious toxic leadership and just could not wait to get out. So I would probably, I don't know what advice I would give that one other than don't get out, but that might not necessarily be the greatest advice, because getting those 2 years of, okay, I'm doing great on the outside, but nobody here really cares about improving themselves. They just want to punch the clock and go home.
Right.
That's the stuff that brought me back in. The second Sergeant Daubert, I would say probably my biggest thing was, and you could say this to Staff Sergeant Daubert and Gunnery Sergeant Daubert as well, was, hey, rely on those guys around you. Start building those relationships. I was very much a do it myself kind of guy. We in my family, because my boy's doing the same thing. He's ever since he was, could even speak, nope, don't need help, do it self.
Right.
So we call it do it self, and I very much was a do it self guy. That probably made life a little bit harder for me, because it is those relationships you build with other people that will get you there, and that will get you over, and help you through those hard times. I probably went through a lot of things that maybe I didn't need to, because I was trying to do it myself.
How do you think Sergeant Daubert, the second one, would respond to that? So Master Guns, same name tape.
Yeah.
Talking to him like, you're not with my unit.
Yeah. I'd probably take a little bit on board. I mean, again, that's when like I said, that was when I had my first, for what you would call a real mentor in Gunnery Sergeant Watson. He pulled me aside a couple times and said, okay, you probably shouldn't be doing this. Hey, you need to look at the long game, rather than just what's in front of you here and now. Again, I was a little bit older at the time. I think I understood a little bit more at the time, kind of what the roles were. I was a platoon sergeant as a sergeant, and I did what sergeants would do. I was a yeller. I was I would scream at people. I'd do what I got to do. One of my corporals came out like a year and a half later, after I'd already been with Mammoth Hill. Came out there. I was a staff sergeant. I was a platoon commander at that point, and he comes over as a sergeant, and Seth Mayo.
That name sounds familiar.
Yeah, he was up at the MCO for a while, and he was in my platoon for about 2 weeks. He's like, "What happened to you?" I'm like, "Well, what are you talking about?" He's like, "You used to be a dick, and now you're not." And I'm like, "Well, that's not my role anymore. I'm the platoon commander. My job is to teach and mentor. I've got 2 other sergeants to be the dicks,
Right.
So I think the second, and again, that was one of the best things about getting out, is I did take it a lot more seriously the second time around. The first time around, I didn't take it seriously at all. Second time around, hey, okay, I'm gonna make something of this. And I kind of more understood the roles.
So you mentioned you get into work in the mornings, and that's when you get your time to kind of clear your head and get some PT in. At your age, what are you doing during those times in order to? Because I don't imagine you're killing it, but I could be wrong.
PT wise,
yeah.
Let's see. Normally,
and I ask because I'm 42 now.
Yeah,
and I've had to adjust my game. I don't run as much as I used to. I'll run a little, but I don't enjoy it because I know it takes a toll on the body. But that's not to say that I'm soft on myself, because I do spend quite a bit of time on the mats, rolling with the junior Marines and some training partners and my sons. So I get after it, but I try to do it in a way that has longevity taken into consideration as I'm doing it. So at your stage of the game, what are you doing in order to stay fit, to push yourself, but also stay healthy?
Yep. I want to say, I always joke that I'm Benjamin Button. I smoked my first 15 years in the Marine Corps, and then I quit. The longer you've been quit, the better your lung capacity gets. So actually, my PFT had been on the improving slope from the time I was like 35 up. So
wow.
So I'm kind of leveling now, but I still keep up with most of what I always do. I'm a creature of habit, so I like to Mondays I like to basically run a PFT. Tuesdays and Thursdays I hit the gym. Wednesdays I do intervals, and Fridays I do a long run. And then I mix it up every now and then, like with our BSIC, I like to do...
What's BSIC?
It's our basic signals intelligence course.
Okay.
We've added ruck runs to that. and other things like that to try to see who may have the physical capability to try to go radar reconnaissance and things like that. So I always go to the 9-mile ruck runs with them. So and try to beat as many of the young Marines as I can.
Yeah,
and I usually do pretty well. So I don't know. I think I hit it just about as hard now as I did 10 years ago.
Okay.
And that's kind of the going back to when I was a younger Marine. Wasn't nothing to do with that, I just
kind of squeak by.
Yeah,
first class.
Very squeak by, and you rely on that younger, that abilities of a younger Marine. Now I know I have to work out to maintain. So
it'll move past you if you're not careful. So kind of switching up a little bit, what's your response or internal reaction when you hear somebody refer to 1 MEF as the Imperial MEF?
I mean, it's
you think it's a deserved moniker?
Well, it's I go off of two things. One, where you sit is where you stand. You're always going to defend your own and attack everyone else.
That's our way.
That's just what you do, right? So, but I spent a lot of years in second. I was there from 92 to 95, and then from 97 to nearly the end of 01. So
so second radio battalion is.
I spent a lot of time in the second radio as well. Exactly. So
you kind of consider that your radmin or.
No, it's. I mean,
you can't say that on tape, I imagine.
Yeah. No, but actually, that was funny because that was my welcome aboard brief from Colonel Jenkins when I got to first radio battalion. He's like, "I see you spent a lot of time in second. Well, you're in first now." But no, I mean, we have different job requirements, and we have different things that we're looking at, and as we should, it's
right.
We're not regionalized. It's specific job things. So, I just take the tasks as they come. So,
okay. So, how do you stay in the loop? What are you reading? How do you get your not what do you read, but how do you get your news? How do you stay abreast of current events?
Probably not as much as I should. I'm a member of the Marine Corps Association, so I get the Gazette, and I read a lot of that. I don't necessarily like that they've started theming them because there's
it kind of detracts away from that.
Well, there's some months it's like, okay, really none of this really applies to me,
Kind of like deep dives into logistics.
And then when it comes to like
not to be dismissive of logistics, right?
But it's things that don't necessarily reflect you every day. So, but then when you get the one that covers our arc field and information warfare and all that, it's like, oh crap, the entire thing is. Man, I ain't got time to read all this. I mean, I'm still reading the last one that was on it.
Yep.
Where I would rather have one piece a month.
Right.
So that the early bird things like that is kind of the kind of stuff I do.
You're the second person to mention the early bird.
Yeah.
You know who the first one was?
Probably Cross.
It was Derry Cross.
Yeah. So,
did you teach him that?
No. But it was very big at Colorado. We were both in Colorado, so maybe that was where we got it. My wife being British, we used to read BBC a lot, but even BBC, which used to be pretty straight down the line, has become very biased. So it's very hard to get unbiased news nowadays.
It is
very hard.
One of the the approach that I've taken is try to get a spectrum in order to be able to get a balance or moderate, not necessarily moderate, but a balanced. I guess
make your own decisions
exactly.
from all the sides. Yeah,
a balanced data set is the expression I was looking for. I mentioned it to one of the other guests that strategic forecasting out of Austin has a pretty good product that requires a subscription. I think it's like $40 a month, if I'm not mistaken. And I'll resubscribe and let it lapse, from time to time, depending on what I have going on. But usually, what they put out is kind of like a geopolitical intelligence assessment. You pay for it, but it's all in class, and it's definitely a different take than what you get out of CNN or Fox News, or the list goes on and on.
When I was going through NIU, they were pushing real hard the foreign policy magazine, which has some pretty good stuff, but again, some of that's biased. And then, interestingly enough, if you read the English version of Der Spiegel, you can get some pretty good.
Der Spiegel.
It's the German news thing, but it's a good way to look at how the Europeans look at us.
Okay. I didn't realize you were an NIU grad.
Yep, I did the part-time cohort thing.
Okay.
So it was 2 years of VTC classes. They actually had the actual class in campus, and then there was one in Colorado and one in Georgia, and we all VTC'd in. So it was 2 years of classes and then another year to write your thesis.
Have you tried listening to podcasts besides this one?
This is the first one I've listened to, and it was just a couple of days ago, and I usually use the Derry Cross one because I knew him, so I was like, I'll listen to his.
You think you'll listen to this one?
I don't know if I listen to this one because I don't like to hear myself on radio, but I will definitely listen to the Scoggins and the Carter and all the other leaders in our field.
Will you forward it to somebody?
I don't know. I'll have my wife listen to it first. If it passes her muster, maybe.
So would you say that because your wife is from the UK, that your time out there was your favorite duty station? Yeah,
absolutely. Not only meeting her, obviously, of course, but I joined the Marine Corps to travel and to see new things and experience new things. So the ability to do that, the UK really, I really got along with the UK.
Okay. At what point in time did you decide you wanted to stick around and go for 30? Like, where were you at when that happened?
2 points, actually. When I first joined, I wanted to do 30. I'm like, can you sign up for 30? Yeah. And then so I signed up for the max you could at the time, 6 years. And then I hit the float from hell and got out and disillusioned.
Changed the game.
And then I came back in, and when I came back in, I ran smack into some toxic leadership again. And I really did what did I just do? Why did I just come back in? So I set myself I set a goalpost at that point. I said, because I'm an everything happens for a reason guy. I said, okay, if I'm going to hang around, something's got to happen. So I set myself 2 goals, because that next enlistment would take me to 10 years. So I was like, 2 things got to happen. 1, I've got to get a good duty station. And 2, I got to get selected for staff sergeant, or I'm just going to go ahead and get out a second time. Well, both those things happened, so okay, then that's obviously a sign. So at that point, like...
What were the details of those circumstances?
Of the duty station was getting men with hell. So,
okay.
And then again, I got selected like a month before I would have hit 10 years, and I guess it was a bit dicey, because even though I was what they call a PSEPer, I was still considered first termer, so I still had to fight for a boat space, right?
Yeah.
So my EAS was October 6th. I found out they didn't release them until October 1st. So October 1st, I still didn't know whether I was going to be able to stay in or not. 6 days later.
Talk about a stressful time.
Oh, I'm telling you. So, but yep, you're approved for enlistment. September 28th, you're selected for staff sergeant. Hey, here's your orders to men with hell. That's obviously a sign. Got there, took over a platoon, and I would say that's originally, well, first off, I went to one shop where I was just doing shop work and all that for the first year. But the second year, when I took over platoon and actually, okay, boom, here's your platoon of Marines and you're a staff sergeant and go. That was really when I'm like, okay, this is where I'm meant to be.
So, why'd you stay enlisted? Did you ever consider pursuing the warrant officer route or commissioned officer?
I did consider both. I considered the warrant officer route, but, and maybe this is because of my broken time, but to me, the warrant officer is the technical expert. By the time I felt like I kind of knew what I was doing in the field, I was beyond eligibility. I'd been in too long. Everything happens for a reason again. They actually twice after that, they changed the maximum time, because I think the maximum time used to be like 12 years or something like that, or 10 years. Yeah, it was something like that. I think it was 12. They changed the maximum time, but every time they put it right behind me.
Ouch.
But to me, the second time they did that, it was like, that's a sign. This is not my path. This is not what I'm meant to do. So I just continued down my path. I had thought about being an officer before. I had tattoos that probably would not allow me to become an officer. I no longer have those tattoos.
That's a rough one.
Yeah, but it's those kind of things. Just, it wasn't my path.
How do you feel about the Marine Corps' tattoo policy?
When I came in, the only people that had tattoos were convicts, Marines, and sailors. That was it.
It was part of our cultural identity.
It was. That was the only people you saw with tattoos. Once it became acceptable in society, everybody's got tattoos now. Once it became acceptable in society, we banned them. So I don't know how much of it is really for a reason, or that we just want to be different. We want to set ourselves apart, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but I don't think that's the way to set ourselves apart.
I would agree with that. I don't have any tattoos. I've thought about it, toyed with the idea,
yep.
But I don't know if there's something I'm that interested in having marked up
yep.
on me just yet. But
they're a lot more painful to remove than they are to get.
Spoken from experience.
Oh, yeah.
So let me ask you, Master Guns, if they were going to make a movie about you, who'd play the part?
Oh, good Lord. I don't know, Steve Buscemi? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's I don't follow celebrity much.
What kind of movies do you like?
Nowadays, I'm into post-apocalyptic type stuff.
Okay. Have you seen The Road?
Yes.
What'd you think about that one?
I liked it. It was just the two of them making their way through. I already told you, I grew up a loner kind of thing. So I think the reason I like the post-apocalyptic type stuff is because you sit there and go, yeah, all you people are going to die and I'm living. So.
Did you like Fury Road?
I have never seen that one.
Mad Max Fury Road, the most recent Mad Max one.
I haven't seen it.
Definitely right up your alley if you like post-apocalyptic. Yeah. What about I Am Legend?
I have not actually seen that yet. I've been wanting to see it, but it hasn't come on Netflix yet. So
it's interesting because when it came out, I remember discussing with a colleague of mine that the actual book, the movie doesn't convey some of the double entendres, layered underneath the surface of the book, in that the main protagonist is not necessarily the good guy, even though he's the survivor. Yeah. That if you force yourself or allow yourself to adopt the opposite perspective, you'll see that he's somewhat of a monster himself. In order to survive, right? And I think The Road kind of touches on that. When the son's asking his father, we're the good guys, right? And he's like, yeah, we are. But have you ever? Your kids don't play video games, I take it.
No,
I don't see you as being a gamer.
No. We actually for this last Christmas we debated getting them some sort of video game system, and so what we ended up getting them was they have like a box that looks like the old Super Nintendo and has the old Super Nintendo games on it. Yeah. We got them that, and they play it. It was the right choice because they play it once a month. So
okay. Well, if you ever get into it, there's on the PlayStation. There's a game called The Last of Us, and it's post-apocalyptic, and it actually starts here in Texas with a biological outbreak, and it's a fungus that kind of like the fungus that will take over an ant colony, and it starts to control the ants. Well, somehow or other through the fiction, it starts to affect human beings, and I guess the best analogy I can give you from a movie perspective is it's kind of a cross between True Grit. I don't know if you like Westerns.
A little bit.
So True Grit, The Road to Perdition, and The Road kind of wrapped up into one. Have you seen Road to Perdition? It's a movie with Tom Hanks. He plays a hitman for a gangster whose employers kind of turn on him. So him and his son have to kind of get out of town, so to speak. It's kind of the world against them. It's an apocalyptic situation for them, as you can imagine. But the video game kind of rolls all that up into one. And the main character, you are forced to transport this young lady who could be the key to salvation from point A to point B. And watching a movie is one thing, but the interactive experience of actually playing the game, and you can set it down to where it doesn't require much skill to just be involved in what I would consider to be just kind of an interactive fiction experience. But turn the lights down low, crank up the sound just a little bit, and if that's
transport you,
if that's your cup of tea, I think you'll really enjoy it, because one of the key aspects of the zombies is as the fungus completely like overtakes their cranium, they can no longer see, but they can still hear. So in order to trap prey, they start resorting to echolocation. So you're kind of traversing through sewers trying to get from, like I said, point A to point B, and you can see the zombies around you, and they're clicking, looking for signs of life. So and you have to kind of creep through them and whatnot.
That sounds fun.
Every so often you have to find an object on the ground and kind of throw it in the opposite direction. So they'll fixate on that so you can kind of get through. But I will warn you that it's not for the faint of heart, and it's also not appropriate for children.
Yeah.
The
last video game I played was right before my. I have not played a video game since my daughter, my oldest, was born. But I was playing at that time. I was playing Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. So also not appropriate for children.
No, not at all. But one of the things that I found recently amongst the Marines at Radbin and just throughout the fleet is they don't play spades anymore.
Oh, I was actually thinking that earlier when somebody was talking about playing games while everyone's waiting. I think when you talk about playing games, we played spades and
the table talk and the conversation that took place there. I mean, it's how
and dominoes.
Yeah, that was another one. That was another one. I played more dominoes on ship than I did on deployments, but lot of spades, a lot of chess. Used
Hearts,
to play
euchre.
Yeah, I played some hearts. Didn't play much euchre. Wasn't a big fan of that. But man, we played a lot of spades. So let me ask you: if you sit down with three of your young Marines, what are the rules that you're going to give them right off the bat for the way that you play or you grew up playing spades in the Marine Corps?
Oh, good Lord! I was more of a euchre guy, so for spades. I never got fancy with it. People talking about the run up and run down and double blind, and that just confused me.
Straight spades. Hard bags.
Oh, what?
Hard bags, meaning that if you bid 6 and you get 7, you get 61 points, and if you get 10 bags, 10 overbidded hands,
Yeah, I remember there was something about so many overbids. Yeah, you couldn't overbid or something like
Yeah.
that. So it's been a long time.
We used to play. So I brought some cards out to the social today, but I don't think anybody took it up. We used to play Joker, Deuce, Big Joker pools, Little Willy Walk.
Yeah, all that stuff just confused me.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, if you had to kind of line it out, what do you think your weak suit is as a Marine, as a leader? Do you think that there are areas where you're kind of still working on that particular area?
I would say my biggest struggle is at this level is keeping up with the technology. You know, the old dogs, new tricks type thing. I mean, it just moves so fast.
Yeah.
And my roles have been more personnel management the last few times. So if you were to put me on a pause and tell me to go, yeah, I wouldn't be able to keep up, you know. So, but that's not necessarily my what I need to do.
That's not your role anymore.
But I there are times I feel like I don't fully understand how much there is to do it, and I can see that kind of the gap line between me and some of the younger up and comers, I guess you'd say. You know, I mean, I grew up. My MOS school was just more scope. That was it. And then you did, and I could probably still copy 30s today.
Wow.
Because I just spent years in Rhoda doing it. You know, and you know, so 450. I've never been to 450 anything. So everything else after that was self-taught. But I listened to some of the young friends, the Sean Nicows and the Willie Pascuas and all that. And I mean, those guys speak in ones and zeros, and it just, I mean, their technical knowledge is so far beyond. So my technical knowledge is I just can't keep up on that. So I would say that's probably my biggest weakness, is that I think I've addressed my other weaknesses. For the longest time, mine was, I don't want to say not being empathetic, but not really understanding the family dynamic and everything else that is required into it, and really dealing with the people side of it. So, and taking all the different personalities.
Do you think it's because you started with the family late in the game, comparatively speaking?
Absolutely, that is it. And then, even then, my wife came from a profession that requires it to be your whole life. She was theater stage management. So when it came to tech week or the actual show, we would see each other a couple hours a week, and that was it.
Yeah.
You know, it was a 6 day a week job for her. So that's definitely helped me on the home front, because she fully understands when you got to put your whole life into your job. It's taken me a lot of years to be empathetic to those who have other things in their lives, that they can't always put the Marine Corps 100% first. That's definitely what I've learned over the last, I'd say, 5-6 years.
What best practices have you identified with regard to parenting while in uniform?
I mean, everyone's got their own different situation. I'm fortunate that we started later in life, so we made the decision early on that as soon as we were going to start having kids, my wife would stop working and just raise the kids 100%. So right. I have that advantage that I can do that. Because, I mean, if you think about it, the kids go to school. They go to school, they leave the house at 7:30. They get off at 2:30, except on Thursdays it's 1:30. If she was working, holy cow, who'd be there for, So I've had that advantage that I can concentrate on work. She can concentrate on the kids. Especially these dual military families, how they do it, it's
amazing.
It is. It absolutely is. So, but I will say, military kids definitely learn resiliency. That is for sure. Best practices for parenting. I don't know that I'm necessarily the right guy to get. I kind of wish I could have my wife here, and you could speak to her, because she'll tell you the best practices, because she's the one that puts them in practice. So.
And during your time in, have you ever had to rely upon or reach out to like some of these nonprofits that are set up to assist veterans? And the reason why I ask is because I normally include some type of announcement at the beginning of each episode that touches on something that may be near and dear to the heart of the guest. Is there something like that you've had in your experience, or maybe an organization that stepped in to help one of your junior Marines over your time in?
As far as veterans organizations, I mean, the only one we've really had any interaction with is the USO. We've always been really big with USO. It's one of the charities that we give money to every year. The USO provided, in a lot of my deployment locations, they provided the Wi-Fi and things like that, and the computers and all that, so that I could actually take a break and Skype the family. And I'm telling you, that has been such a difference maker. When I was a young Marine, again, I was single, but the guys I was with, you'd hear, every time we come off a float, you get the stories. One of my good friends, Mike Cochran, used to tell me, when he came back off a float.
I know Cochran.
You know him?
Yeah.
So we came off a float, and his kid hid in the corner because he didn't know who this man was. Because back then all you had was snail mail. You might occasionally get a Mars call, where you had to say over on the phone back home, or you hit port and try to get a phone card. And the USO and the VFW both used to provide phone cards back in those days too. So those are both good organizations. But to be able to Skype with the family, when my kids were little, so they didn't really understand it. They just knew I wasn't there, and they'd be real cranky all day until the Skype call. Once we had the Skype, literally they would only see me for like 30 seconds, and they go off and do something else, because they knew everything was okay. And when I came back from my deployment, as my wife likes to remind me, I think I saw my boy, I think she wants to say 91 days of his first year of life. So I come home from deployment, and he wouldn't go to anybody but her. And within 10 minutes, he was sitting on my lap, because he recognized me from Skype. And it's just such a difference maker.
Yeah, the sound of your voice was soothing to him. It wasn't something strange and unfamiliar. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to think about how fast the technology has moved, because I remember those phone banks, call centers, and at one point, and there being limited resources, right? You only had maybe 15 minutes per session, and you have to get back in line if you had the time, right? And sometimes I made every opportunity to get 2 phone calls in, or if there was nobody there in line, if you hit the right spot, you could talk for as long as you had minutes for. But now, I mean, you just log on and you're there, and you don't even have to log on a laptop. You can do it on just a personal electronic device, a phone or iPad or something along those lines, just as long as you're connected to a data network. And it makes a huge difference. Remember when I floated in 2008, they were videotaping us reading books, and they would send the videotape to your family. I mean, just now, you just FaceTime with them, Skype with them, whatever, and you could just do it live, and nothing to worry about. But family readiness is one of those things that I see the Marine Corps getting right, at least to the extent of, we know it's inextricably linked to performance. And I think that it's kind of mind-boggling to consider that it took us this long to figure it out.
We came from a generation where you just didn't talk about that stuff. You just got on with it, because I mean, when I came in, some of my older staff NCOs, they were all non-vets, and you just didn't talk about that stuff, they just, family was just the old saying, if the Marine Corps wanted you to have a wife, they'd issued you one.
Exactly.
So it's not surprising, and again, that's, like I said before, was one of my weaknesses is for the longest time was recognizing the impact that the family had on it, partly because I didn't have one. I mean, I was gunny before I ever had a kid.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, one of the phrases that I heard growing up from some of the elders in my family, my grandmother and so others, was, you tell me who you walk with and I tell you who you are. And Master Guns, I want to tell you that I really appreciate you taking the opportunity to sit down and share your thoughts with us. And I'm proud to walk alongside you.
Well, thank you for having me.
And with that, we're out.